Welcome back to the Void Podcast. Today we're talking about a bunch of things. Starting off is border security. That seems to be a really big issue in America right now.
I'd say so.
Well, how do you talk about border security being an issue while still being a person on the left? Because people on the left don't like to talk about border security.
Well, it's weird. I think back to, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think back to Bernie Sanders, like before he ran for president. Mm-hmm. He would go on Fox News all the time and talk about why he wanted a lot of limits on immigration because he thought it hurt American workers, even though he's a very far left person. Barack Obama, when he was president, he did some things that made it easier for citizens to get in, but he also deported a ton of immigrants. I'm
pretty sure he was. What was he known as? There was some
deporter in chief.
Exactly.
So it's. I think it's played to be a much more partisan thing than it is. The real thing is like Democrats are kind of moderates on immigration, and Republicans are like.
It seems full stop no immigration.
Right. Yeah. I think it's very compatible with being left wing.
Yeah, I mean, even limits. Gavin Newsom, he says. He thinks that there's a border crisis right now. He wants border security to be tightened. Leading left-wing politicians want there to be more funding towards border security. In fact, there was a bill passed or attempted to be passed like 3 weeks ago now. And only 4 Republicans voted for it, which is impressive anyway, as it goes. Like trying to get stuff passed in a divided Congress is very difficult. But they didn't pass it. There's plenty of reasons why you could say they don't want to, but I think the two big ones are, one, they didn't like that it was coupled with foreign aid, which is a little bit fair, but also, two, Trump's running on a anti-immigration sentiment, right? He's running on, he's going to be the guy, immediately when he gets in office, he's going to blow the whistle and border security will be tightened, bang, no one's coming in. So it makes it look bad for his main point that he's running on, for Biden to be the person to fix it, right? Because then what are you even running on at that point? You're just running on deep state shit.
I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up. I remember Sam Cedar talking about this back in 2016. Are you familiar with like the Trans-Pacific Partnership? No. It was like a big trade deal that Obama was pushing for that a lot of protectionist people on the left and right, like populists, were really against because it exported a lot of jobs to other countries. But it had a lot of like labor and climate stuff that was also good. But it seemed like the type of bill that Republicans would be primed to support because it was very pro-capital. But it couldn't pass. It couldn't get like barely any Republican votes. And it's because like even when conservative ideas are branded, if it's a purely conservative idea, if a Democrat's pushing it, you're going to lose the Republican Party still.
Yeah. Because
they're not going to get elected if they're seen to be working with Biden.
Do you think that there's been a shift in the Republican Party from trying to pass Republican legislation to now not trying to pass Republican legislation, but just trying to stop Democratic legislation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you see on the state level, there's a little bit more activism within Republican legislatures, whether it's like banning abortion or like the anti-woke bills that you're seeing. I'm sure there's tax cut shit that no one's paying attention to anymore. But yeah, that's definitely been a massive change.
When do you think was the last time that, I mean, obviously Congress has always been relatively divided as normally two factions of Congress would be. When do you think was the last time that we were, when was the last time that we were relatively close?
Like united?
Yeah. I
know back in the 1950s, I've heard this before, like a lot of complaints from the American electorate was that the parties were too similar. After the Civil Rights Act, there was a massive split because it was clear on the issue of race where there's a huge divergence. But like this new wave of division really rose up with like the Tea Party movement in 2010. Like before that, there were like, Joe Manchin.
Yeah. Wait, for anyone wondering, what is the Tea Party? What was the Tea Party movement?
It was a reaction to the Obama election of 2008, where a lot of like grassroots, very far-right conservatives banded together in order to like say we're going to fight everything Obama's doing. It was kind of
a reaction to
Trump stuff.
I thought it was a reaction to the economic crash.
It started as that, but it wasn't effective until Obama took office. Like they really couldn't unify until there was a common enemy.
Okay, because I know that Obama passed some legislation that bailed out large banks.
The first legislation was passed by George W. Bush, TARP, which actually bailed out the banks. But then the 2009 stimulus package by Barack Obama like continued that and also made a lot of benefits and tax cuts for workers as well.
Yeah.
But like before that real division, there were a lot of conservative Democrats in the Senate and a lot of moderate to liberal Republicans. But over the 10 years that followed that, they all got fucking primaried or retired, and now it's completely divided.
Yeah, obviously division fell off a cliff after Trump got elected. How close do you think we would be as divided now as we were if Trump wasn't the president in 2016, or do you think it was just bound to happen?
That's a really good question. Like I know Sarah Palin. You know Sarah Palin?
Yeah, I've heard of her.
She was kind of like proto-Trump in a lot of ways, and like I wasn't really old enough then to understand what was going on. I think it was going to happen. I think Trump might have sped up that process quite a bit, and now there's no going back. But when it comes to like the border, for example, I know when Obama was president, there was a real bipartisan effort. Like people like Marco Rubio, who are like very Trump aligned now, or Lindsey Graham, were working with Obama and like Democratic senators to try to come up with a compromise on immigration. There's no way that could happen now. And there's no way that could happen on a whole set of issues. You know?
Here, this is the something for me, right? I don't have an issue with populism. I think that's like a fine idea, you know? Like it's the working and middle class people finding someone to lead the way, to stick it to the elites and try to bridge the mostly financial gap between like the very wealthy elites and the poor or working or middle class people, right? So that's not a bad thing, right? But Trump's kind of speaking in populist tone, but not really doing anything for the people that he's claiming that he's trying to help, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you have an issue with populism, or do you think Trump, or do you have an issue with populism, or do you have an issue with Trump? Or do you have an issue with both, or do you have an issue with neither?
I think that I have an issue with both to some extent, but like ultimately, I don't really judge populism in a moral way. I'm not super attracted to it. There's been times where I have been, but like it's really just a strategy to unite people.
What don't you like about populism?
I think that populism feeds very easily into anti-elitism, which can be fine, but it can also feed into things like not believing in experts, not believing in studies, not believing in mainstream media.
Yeah.
So I think it has when you attack certain institutions and use populism to do that, that's great. But when you attack all institutions as part of your belief system, you're going to end up believing in tons of conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think now about people not really believing in experts now and following kind of thought leaders? Like someone, it's kind of crazy to say now that someone would take the word of Tucker Carlson over like Fauci, right?
Well, let me ask you, right? I mean, when did you first get engaged in like news and politics?
Probably after 2016. It probably might not have been directly 2016, but a little bit after that.
Was there ever a time where experts were the people who you went to for news? Or
that's a good question.
Stuff like that. For me, there never was. I hear old people talk about like Walter Cronkite. Like he was like a news anchor on CBS for like 30 years, and everybody was like, oh, like whatever he said was true, and the whole country believed it. You know, it was just straight news. But like for our generation, I feel like there's always kind of been this dynamic where we just latch on to charismatic personalities, and that's who we listen to.
I don't really mind it that much. I just think so. It's like
we talked to Erudite about this a little bit.
Yeah, she agreed. Well, she was the one that actually brought forth the idea that we just follow thought leaders now and not experts, right? And I think we always kind of did that, but it's just thought leaders were a little bit more connected with being considered experts. So it's like if you watched the news, you probably thought what the news was telling you was true. And the issue is now there have been a select few times where the news has gotten things incorrect, or maybe they pushed a narrative that was a little bit less like straight down the line fact, and maybe there was some like partisanship.
I'd go further than that. I think it's a chronic problem.
Okay, yeah. So that's what's happening now. So now it feels like there's less experts, and the burden of proof is on the actual like scientific experts, like the people that do the research and the people that publish the studies. Mm-hmm. But they aren't the people that talk the most because they're not very sociable.
Yeah. No, I was watching Adam Friedland's show, which is a really good show. You guys should check it out. But he had Neil deGrasse Tyson on, and he was talking about like you're kind of the last of your kind, which is like a scientific person who's also like a celebrity. So it's like someone who communicates science to everyone. I know the moment I think that experts lost the game was Fauci. You know, like that was really the end of that wave. You know.
Do you think Fauci did something wrong?
No, I think like 90% of the shit he was doing was just like straight science. There was one thing I had a problem with, which was like he told people masks weren't effective early on, and then later on he was interviewed about it, and he's like, we said that to even though we knew it wasn't true, so that we'd make sure that essential workers and nurses and shit had enough masks, and not everyone bought them out.
Yeah.
But it's like once you get one thing like that, everyone's gonna tune you out, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think it's mostly just populism. It's not really these people fucking up too hard. When it comes to scientists, like maybe you can criticize news anchors more, you know.
Yeah. And I don't actually really even have an issue with thought leaders being the predominant voices. It's just thought leaders need to be fueled by expert opinion, right? So it's like, I don't mind if Tucker Carlson is going out there and being the person that the public listens to the most. It just so happens that Tucker Carlson feeds misinformation and sometimes even disinformation. So that's the main issue. It doesn't need to be a scientist telling you what's going on. It just needs to be a thought leader or a charismatic person that tells you factual information.
Let me ask you about this, because I think that one of the biggest trends going on right now in our society is that people really will not take accountability for what people are doing, like themselves and also ordinary people. It's all about institutions, right? And I think that criticizing a thought leader is sort of the same as praying to them like you're God in some ways. Like, do you think that Trump and Tucker Carlson and Hassan Piker or Tate or whoever the fuck you want to pick make people crazy? Or do you think there's a deep yearning and laziness within people to be radical right now? Like, are people being radicalized, or are radical people being radical?
Yeah, it's probably the latter. Like, it's people that are already prone to being radical that now have have the right people feeding them like the radical information. Right?
Like, there was a guy...
it's like people want to believe in a conspiracy because it's fun, you know?
There was a guy named Aaron Bushnell, and we talked about this earlier, but I don't think we were talking about it in the right way, who, in a protest, lit himself on fire yesterday because he's frustrated with the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah.
Not a Palestinian guy, American guy, probably a left-winger, 25, you know? And just the way that social media was reacting to this thing is like... criticizing him for the language used of like rest in power, for that being racist, you know. Did he have a mental health issue, or is this a real protest? And there's all these crazy fucking questions, you know. I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just like, I feel like a lot of people are just going to really far extremes to try to communicate political messages, you know. If you look at January 6th, if you look at school shooter manifestos, if you look at shit like that, like, I don't know. It's just like, it seems to be a really radical populist right now.
Yeah. The radical stuff is obviously what gains the most attention, but I'm pretty optimistic to think that there's a massive, massive silent majority of people that aren't radical. You know, it's just the most radical people get the most attention. And I think it's people like us that aren't radical. And I think there's a lot more out there that are probably relatively similar in our positions.
Do you ever read through Instagram Reels comments?
Yeah.
I do too, and I consume a lot of basketball shit. And the level of sexism I see on that application makes me think that you're wrong.
Yeah. Okay. But here's I'll throw this at you.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So I agree that you see a lot of that on Instagram Reels. So it's two things, or it's two paths. One of them is true. So I've probably commented things that are like crazy on Instagram Reels.
But you don't comment like women coffee cup.
No,
right?
I know, but it's just like a part of the joke. So it's either there's a bunch of people that know what they're saying is wrong, but they're doing it as a joke, or it's people that are commenting these things, probably kind of believe in them, but are still joking. So it's like me, I can laugh at those comments and be like, that's so insane. I still think it's funny, but I don't actually believe.
There is some of that, like, you know, like wise words from Nev,
Maybe.
That like blonde girl who like makes jokes in the comment section.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty clear that at this point, all those comments are jokes, right? People are just trying to fuck around. But a lot of the shit, Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry had a 3-point contest recently, and it was fairly close. And a bunch of reels came out, TikToks, I'm sure, about it. A lot of the comments are just like, women can never play in the NBA, and the reel's not even saying that.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually kind of saw the opposite. I thought that was going to happen. But a lot of the comments I saw was like, she kind of held her own. So that makes, maybe it just depends on what content we're consuming. I believe I saw what I think it is like, which is that people are making jokes. But in the event of where Sabrina Ionescu got, I think it was 27 points and Curry got 29, maybe it was like 25 and 29.
Something like that, yeah.
I think it was really close. People were like, she kind of actually did a pretty good job.
I think it was a two-shot different. It was like 26-28 or some shit.
Yeah. And I was impressed. I was impressed by what she did. She also she didn't even have to do this. She shot from the NBA three-point line. She could have shot from the women's three-point line. And maybe she would have beaten Emmy if she did that.
I remember. Do you remember Monet Davis?
No.
Like 12 years ago. I was really big into baseball at the time. And she was the first girl to play in the Little League World Series. And she was just kicking ass. Like, she was the best player. She was, like, a great pitcher. Like, crazy fucking speed and control. And it seems like we're starting to see more dominance with female athletes that people, maybe to some extent, you're right, they're respecting, you know?
Yeah.
Like Caitlin Clark on Iowa. People
like her. The PWHL, which is the women's professional hockey league, that just started maybe like 2 months ago. And people are watching it. And people are watching it because they're making it more similar to the NHL in the sense that they're allowed to hit now, right? So obviously there's biological differences. If you don't think so, you're just wrong and you're bought into some kind of crazy ideology. There's obviously biological differences, and the best way to make women's sports entertaining is to equalize the game, right? So it's like hitting wasn't allowed in it wasn't even PWHL, but hitting wasn't allowed in women's hockey before, but now it is because we know women can hit each other. That's not like a biological thing, like they thought they were too soft, but actually we know that they can hit each other. It's more entertaining now. So it's like in the WNBA, something to make it more entertaining would probably be putting the net down to like 9 feet or something, so you can see people dunk. Yeah. Like what's her name? The woman that got she went to Russia and that she got traded for the Merchant of Death. Brittany Griner. She's able to dunk, right? Her dunk is literally a regular dunk, and the entire crowd goes wild, right? And that's fine because you don't see that very often. But imagine if the net was 9 feet, how many Brittany Griners we'd be able to see? Yeah. How many more impressive dunks you'd be able to see? Dunks are like the most highlightable, clippable part of basketball, and that they don't do that at all in the WNBA. So no wonder there aren't highlights. No wonder people aren't watching as much.
I think that would be a great idea to engage people further. There's people like Diana Taurasi or Sue Bird, who are still very engaged in like basketball commentary after like being WNBA stars for a while. But like, and I love those people, but like the level of respect that league gets is so low. Yeah. Like, JaVale McGee. So his mom is one of the greatest female basketball players of all time. She's like the Tim Duncan. She's like 7th or 8th best of all time. When I was doing my little fucking internet show when I was like 13, I just emailed her and she like got back to me, and we did an episode together. Yeah. Do you think Tim Duncan or Hakeem Olajuwon, it'd be that easy to reach them?
No, of course not.
No. And I think one of the things is men definitely need to start watching women's sports. Do you think women will ever start watching women's sports?
I think that is the biggest issue. Women don't watch sports generally as much as men do. Like if you look, this was a while ago, so maybe the demographics have changed. But WNBA viewership is still predominantly male. Women just don't watch it. It's not really like men aren't watching it enough.
Why do you think that is?
That could be attributed to a variety of different factors. It's like I think there's probably some social thing to it. Like women, when they're younger, aren't encouraged to go play sports. So then when you aren't encouraged to play sports, you aren't as encouraged to watch sports. You aren't encouraged to like care about sports at all. So like the entire atmosphere would have to change from birth. Like women would have to be encouraged to play sports just as much as men. And then maybe women would care about sports just as much. It's kind of just like the realms that gender kind of live in, I wonder if that's a biological thing or not. I'm not a biologist or a scientist. I don't know that, but it does seem that societally, socially, women care about sports a lot less than men do.
I agree. And it's interesting because women also complain a lot about the WNBA not being viewed a lot, And I understand why that comes from a gender place. But there does seem to be something that it exists there. It exists in politics, right? When people will complain about why isn't Biden doing this? It's like, well, did you vote? Unless you engage with these institutions, they're not really going to respond to your demands.
Yeah, of course. And that what we're saying isn't like the sole issue is women are watching sports. Obviously, there's sexism at play. That's probably a very large reason why people shit on the WNBA is because of sexism. Like it could be a woman being sexist towards her own gender, or it could be men that are being sexist towards them as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Sexism is a very real thing, but also men watch WNBA the most. That's something. If you care about WNBA viewership, start being a viewer.
Lower the hoop, and the viewership would double.
Yeah, and also just start watching. If you care about it, just like you said, if you want to see political change, vote. If you want to see change in sport viewership, become a viewer. Change the sport viewership.
Are you voting in Canada next cycle?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Who are you gonna vote for? Do you know yet? I guess we're still a couple years out. But.
This is the issue. I right now don't really want to vote for Trudeau. But the issue is I'm not informed enough, and I know I'm not informed enough to know if the reason why I don't want to vote for Trudeau is actually because he's bad or if it's just it's all I see. Like I'm trying to put myself in the perspective of someone who thinks that Biden's a worse president than Trump. You know, like I've talked to a few of my friends. I haven't heard one friend, other than people I already know that I don't even care about asking if they would vote for Biden because they would just say yes. Who would you vote for, Biden or Trump? And it's like, I think I might vote for Trump on this one. Biden just seems really old. So it's like Biden old, Trudeau bad communist. I wonder if it's the same thing going on there.
It's so interesting to me listening to you as a Canadian because, like you just said, like you would have such an issue with that if it was someone talking about American politics. But like this is your fucking home. This is the country that you've lived your entire life in. The only country that you can vote in. You know?
No, I can vote in America.
Okay,
we've done this like a few times actually.
But the country that you're going to be voting in, where the decisions made by the government will directly affect you, you know, and like why don't you do the same level of research or thought about this country as you do about a country you don't live in?
That's a good question. Well, for one, I do eventually want to move to the States, so I don't mind caring a little bit more. But obviously, that's not the driving factor for why I'm not invested in Canadian politics. I gotta say, honestly, you can hate Trump for a bunch of reasons, but he got a lot of people into politics. He made politics viewable. Politics was really boring before, and maybe once you're like 35, you start caring about politics more because you're just older and more mature. But Canadian politics is still kind of boring.
And it's permeated here to the extent that the main criticism people throw at Poilievre is like, oh, you're Canadian Trump.
And
that's how also Americanized Canadian politics
but
are.
also he's made it more entertaining. Like that clip of him eating the apple. Like Pierre Poilievre was eating an apple, and he absolutely destroyed this reporter because the reporter was saying, like, you're kind of like Trump. He's like, what does that mean? And then he was saying, well, you're speaking to like populist sentiment. He's like, what is populism? You know, he handled that really well, and it was also an entertaining clip.
Let me ask you two questions, all right? What percent of your problem with Trump is the issues you disagree with him on? Like the actions he will take or not take. Like not like character stuff, but like policy. We said it's the majority of your problem with Trump.
The issue is majority of my problem isn't really with his policy because he didn't really pass that much policy.
Well, could even be a criticism revolve? I'm just saying how he governs versus his character flaws.
I don't care that much about who he is as a person.
Okay,
like,
yeah. Right.
I don't care like about. Obviously, I care about. Okay, what I'm about to say. This is important to keep a nuanced ear, right? He was indicted for sexual assaults, I believe. He was actually a co-conspirator. I don't know if that's the right term. Co-conspirator with Jeffrey Epstein. He was indicted. Jeff Epstein.
Your buddy.
He was indicted for a sexual assault, I believe, of a minor. It might not have been a minor. I'm pretty sure it was, though. I don't know if I care that much about that, but I do care about, because I mean, that could be more attributed to character flaws, but I do care about, one, him bringing classified documents home, not giving them back, and potentially sharing them with people that didn't have classified clearance. Mm-hmm. That I think is an issue. I also think it's an issue when he's trying to undermine the election. That is also a real issue that I don't think the president of the United States should be acting in. Like, it'd be different if one person came up to him and said, I have an idea. Let me try to win you this election. I'm going to go to Georgia and try to get 11,780 votes. I'm going to do the call. I'm going to try to get it work. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll get in trouble. But Trump was the one leading the charge in that. I have an issue with the president of the United States not acting presidential, which could also be a bit of a character thing. There's just so many things that you can be mad about Trump at, and none of it for me is, oh, he's racist, oh, he's sexist, oh, he's a bad guy.
That's so interesting to me because, like, I have issues with I don't care about the acting presidential thing, but I don't care about his legal issues. I think it speaks to what a piece of shit he is. But at the end of the day, if Biden had sexual assault charges against him, I'd still vote for Biden. Because at the end of the day, what I look at from Trump's legacy is like, all right, he appointed Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade. He decimated welfare and unions and enriched the rich and made the poor poorer. Like, how can I
Also
support any of that?
this is
that's the shit that affects people, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. But also, this is something about a narrative that's been going around is that Trump was a really good president because he didn't start any new wars. One, that's not really true. He bombed, I believe, Yemen. He bombed a few other places, I believe.
Syria.
But he also was he was a determining factor in wars that happened. So like the Afghanistan pullout, people criticized Biden about, but Trump said he was going to be the person to pull out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think they were both right about
he
pulling
pulled away
out.
troops. Yeah, no, that's
Trump was a
important.
pussy about it. Though.
Yeah,
He
Trump
pushed
didn't
it
do it.
down to Biden.
He pushed it down to Biden. He brought troops to a historically low level in Afghanistan. Trump did that. Then Biden pulled them out. He said he wasn't going to be able to do it. Even in relation to Israel-Palestine, I believe that there was a conference that he was a part of, and they brought Israel government to or Israeli government to that conference, but they didn't bring Hamas to that conference. That's like that's like they're not even listening to me, so I'm going to go commit a terror attack. Trump has kind of been a part and is the reason why like wars are starting now. Like wars don't start immediately. Like just if looking at it in like the 4-year window doesn't really make any sense, right? But he was kind of a catalyst for current wars and current conflicts. And I don't think people really talk about that.
Do you think if Trump came out and all the GOP, like senators and shit, and said, we're going to be the party that defends Palestine, like, fuck it. Do you think that they would get young people to vote for them?
Yeah, they're probably get a few.
That's fucked up.
I know, it's pretty insane.
Because I think young people hate both Biden and Trump. And they'd be like, this is our biggest issue right now.
I know, but dude, I'm pretty sure Trump would be even less severe on Israel. Because I honestly think Trump's a bit of a pussy. Like, people said that Trump, the reason why no new wars or whatever started, stupid narrative. But they said they didn't start it because people feared Trump. It's like Trump's kind of a pussy, dude. Like, I don't know, like what propaganda videos you're watching that make you think Trump's this super tough guy, but he is a loser. If people don't like him, he gets mad. Obama dissed him in a press conference one time, and people say that's the reason he ran for president. He got his feelings hurt.
Yeah, no, for real. At the Correspondence Center, he just got roasted. Democrats are against war, like the voters generally. Republicans don't even give a fuck. It's just, is there a party pushing for it or not? Because Bush was the guy who did the Iraq War, and all the Republicans were like, oh, yeah. But then, like, Ukraine comes up under Biden, and they're like, no. It's completely inconsistent, Circling back to what I was going to ask you, though. So if Trump's actions, or honestly whatever concerns you about Trump, if you were to take a spectrum between Trump and Biden based on how good you think they'd be as presidents, would Poilievre be closer to Biden or Trump?
Poilievre would probably be closer to Biden.
Why?
Well, it depends on like
he's a
what.
conservative here, right? So he's
he's
of
a
the right,
conservative here, but
the party of the right
conservatism in Canada is more left than conservatism in America.
On what issues?
I think like conservatives are still like relatively more pro-choice than Republicans in America. I think on immigration, like I think Poilievre is the husband of an immigrant. I'm pretty sure.
So is Trump technically.
Yeah, but no one cares about white immigrants in America. Like, that's an insane thing that we can talk about like even more if we want. Like
everybody loves just Jokic.
Everyone likes white. People don't even realize white people are immigrants. Like all European people that come over, like you don't even look at them as an immigrant, but you look at all these Mexican people that are coming in, and you're like, nope, gotta fix that shit. Can't have any brown people in my country. That's pretty crazy. So yeah,
dude, what if Giannis wasn't a basketball player? He just like was a minimum wage like McDonald's worker. Think people would be racist towards him and they'd be like, "You're an immigrant."
Yeah, probably.
So it's not even about country. It's about race because he's fucking Greek.
Yeah, no, it is about race. That's what I'm saying.
Man.
It is about race. That's why I said like it's brown people.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not Mexican people. If Mexican people were white, you wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, even though Melania's basically brown from all like the suntan shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, in those regards, conservatives stray from from Republicans. I believe they also care a little bit more about welfare. Obviously, Canada has free healthcare, and I haven't heard anything about conservatives trying to erode that or bring in private healthcare. So there are differences.
And then he has none of the authoritarian shit that Trump has.
Yeah, Trump is straight up like spewing like fascist and authoritarian rhetoric, like saying like insane shit like the president should have full immunity. That's just crazy. Also, people think that like all this stuff comes out, and then you still get people saying that Trump's going to be the person to bring back law and order into the country. It's like he's on trial, 4 indictments, 91 charges.
It makes me so sad.
And he's saying, no, I shouldn't be charged for any of this stuff.
And you see supporters talk about it and just throw it out.
Yeah.
Oh, rigged courts, fake news, you know?
It's literally, you can
never cross your mind that you could be wrong.
I know, it's
It
literally.
crosses my mind all the time.
That's what I mean. We're always thinking about what we might be wrong.
Yeah.
That's why it's always important to ask yourself, what could change my mind on this issue? Am I wrong? I'm so convicted. My conviction is so strong. Should it be this strong? You know, I wonder, do people even think about that every day? Because I think about that every day. I try to, at least.
I was going to say, you're so convicted, you're Trump.
Exactly. Okay, but in relation to politicians, I guess, Erudite was talking about this. For anyone that doesn't know, we had an interview with Not So Erudite. Her name's Kyla. That's her real name. Her handle is Not So Erudite. But we brought on Not So Erudite for an interview. A really fun conversation. We want to keep doing stuff like that. And she brought up a good point about how, or she maybe like changed my mind a little bit on this, is like politicians are just cogs in the machine. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but they get voter stimulus, and in turn they present legislation that the voters want them to present. I don't really have a problem with that, and I think that people, it feels like people. Okay, yeah. So Republicans kind of have it right here, that politicians are just cogs in the system, and like most politicians are the same. That's kind of true, but it's not a bad thing. Being a cog in the system and being told by the masses, this is what we want, that's what it should be about, shouldn't it be?
I totally agree. I mean, I think there should be some constitutional protections to ensure that we never encroach on the human rights of minorities, because you don't want a situation where 70% of people want to kill the other 30%, and your government's like, oh well, yeah. The people want it.
Yeah, and
that shit, yes, I think public opinion should be in play.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. And that ties into like the whole voting thing. Like, we're young people. Young people don't vote. Or actually, no, this kind of ties into something we already talked about.
I'll say this. When I was in high school, I did a bunch of articles for like local papers and state papers and stuff. And I got really into this research I was doing about the voting age in Vermont, because it's very complicated. Like, you can vote at if you're going to be 18 by the time of the election, you can vote. And so I was thinking, I was like, all right, well, I got 900 kids in my high school. You know, I'm in a small town, not many people vote. If everybody in the high school who was either 17 or 18 said we're going to form a political block of like 250 people, we could swing elections, like on local elections, you know. And I think young people don't really understand that dynamic enough, that it's like, all right, what percent of young people vote? 30, 40%?
Maybe even less, yeah.
If fucking 60% tapped in, you would instantly have both parties gunning for you. Like the shit I was talking about earlier with like, what if Republicans like offered like an olive branch on Palestine? Republicans are going to move to the left, and Democrats are also going to move to the left if young people start swinging fucking elections for them.
Yeah. What do you think that's an American issue? Well, I mean, I know it is an American issue. A lot of other countries have like 85% voter turnout.
I know they do, but I don't know what other countries' split is between young and old.
Okay, because I think this is a big issue, is that yes, it's true that young people don't go out and vote. Yes, it's true that America has as low voter turnout, but I don't think it's just because of the lack of political engagement. There's a real conversation that needs to be had about how difficult it is to vote in America. Like in Canada, for me.
Is it a national holiday here?
It's a national holiday.
Jesus,
there's 2 voting booths within, I think, less than a kilometer of where I live. It's very easy to vote. It's not easy in a lot of places in America to vote.
You know, it'd be a great idea.
Like, what would you care about if you're a working class person going to work and making $100 that day, or going to vote for someone? Because that's the difference between food. That's the difference between rent.
It's fucked up. It's almost a miracle that that so many people do vote in
Yeah.
the U.S. You know, I think what they should make it a national holiday, and I think they should also make it tax deductible. You know, so if you have to drive there, you can write the gas off on your taxes.
Yeah.
Because I think it should be a civic thing. You know, if you're leaving work, you should be able to write that off your taxes. You know?
And this is admittedly, I'm probably uninformed in this area. But from what I can see, Republicans are more against electoral reform than Democrats.
Very much so.
Okay, so that's correct.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by like they're pro voter ID laws, but
And I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think voter ID is a good thing.
Republicans want less people to vote. Democrats want more people to vote.
And what do you think that says about like what party might be right?
Yeah, they're paranoid about losing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, which party do you think has the most traction if everyone was able to vote theoretically, every single person in America? Which party do you think has more traction if one of them wants that and one of them doesn't?
Democrats, and it's not even fucking close. Most people agree with Democrats on most things. You know, if you go issue by issue, you talk about abortion. Most people want abortion to be legal in most cases. You know, talk about raising the minimum wage. You talk about strengthening unions, gay marriage, marijuana legalization.
Isn't it crazy
These are all
that
huge popular issues?
Isn't it crazy in America how the federal minimum wage is $7.25?
It is crazy. I was thinking about that today.
That's half of what I make. The minimum wage in Nova Scotia, I believe, is like $15. It might be a little bit more. That's half of what I make.
Think about
Obviously,
this,
the
right?
American dollar is worth more than the Canadian.
So $7.25 would be about $9.80 CAD. If you made $9.80,
Dude, if I made $9.80, I wouldn't be able to live here.
say you worked 40 hours a week and you worked 4 weeks a month, could you live on $1,600 a month?
Okay, so here, that's actually a good question. Okay, so my budget is $1,600.
Yeah.
So currently rent is $930. So here, actually, like do this through. Okay, rent is $930. So what does that leave me with?
1,600 minus 930, 670.
Okay, food is probably around $100 a week.
So 400.
If I'm not even spending that much.
So let's say 450. You got $220.
$220. Okay, so that's food and rent. Those are the basic necessities, right?
Yeah. But there's also going to be other minor necessities and toilet paper.
Okay, yeah.
And
So let's say
and
let's say you need to get toilet paper.
let's say that's another $40 a month.
Another $40 a month, sure. $40 a month on toilet paper.
Yeah, 180.
Let's say like cleanliness or like hygiene products is another $40 a month.
Okay, so we're down to 140.
Okay, down to 140. Let's think what else.
This is all pre-tax, by the way.
Oh, that's pre-tax as well.
Yeah.
I might already be fucked then.
So maybe you can cut it close. Taxes are incredibly low for people making that much money in America.
Okay.
You
So how much am I at right now?
have $140 left.
So I have 140
You're
bucks
cutting
left.
it very fucking close. You can't save. Let's
Yeah.
pray to God you don't have debt or a
But-
car or kids,
Yeah.
because then you're really fucked.
That's you living on your own. I don't even live on my own. I live with 4 other people.
yeah,
Dude, so how much money do I have left over?
140.
I have 140 bucks for the month to spend on other things that might even be considered needs.
A phone,
And
you
that's
know,
when you're working the entire time.
laundry.
I don't even work. I wouldn't be able to live as a student unless I was taking out a loan or I was being subsidized by someone else.
Yeah,
That's insane.
it is insane. Most states have a higher minimum wage than that, but some states have that minimum wage.
And
it's
most
fucked
people
up.
have to have 2 jobs because of that.
Yeah,
And that's actually a big criticism of when politicians bring up the fact that the unemployment is so low. Like every 4 years they talk about it because every politician gets like some kind of unemployment number that they want to throw out there. But that a lot of the times unemployment would probably be higher because it's not amount of people employed, it's amount of jobs that are had. So it's like if one person has 2 jobs, that shows up as 2 jobs. It doesn't show up as one person having a job.
they have multiple unemployment numbers because it's really fucking complicated.
Yeah.
It's like, who do you count? Do you count like high school kids who theoretically could be working but are not? Like, do you count people who are underemployed who want to get more hours but can't? You know, do you count people who are retired but could theoretically come back into the workforce? It's really complicated.
And that's a big issue. I mean, in California, I think right now, some lady that's running for Senate. This was insane. She suggested $50 minimum wage.
oh fuck! Wait,
That
I
would
want to
never
see
happen.
this.
But I think a $15 minimum wage, or at least what would be equivalent to.
Barbara Lee. Oh my fucking
Yeah.
god! You're not kidding me. I actually liked her. I will say this: there are some cities that it makes sense for the minimum wage to be what we would consider ridiculously high. Not
Yeah.
50, but
Yeah.
I could see like 23 being reasonable.
Well, it's like,
in like
I believe
San
in-
Francisco.
I think
you
it's
know?
like 16 there. I think the highest minimum wage is $17, and that's in Washington District.
Okay, yeah.
But
That probably makes sense there.
Yeah.
That's why, like, I've heard Destiny say this before.
Well, it's also like, yeah, in really rural areas, maybe lower makes sense
yes.
too.
Like, I've heard Destiny before say this, and I disagree with him because he said the minimum wage should go up, but it shouldn't be a living wage. Like, you shouldn't be able to support a family of 4 on a single wage. I agree with that, but I think it definitely should be a living wage for a single person.
Yeah.
And probably a little bit of breathing room beyond that. Like, and I think the best way to do it would be to index it by every county or
Wait, so
district.
why don't you think that a livable wage for a family should be like minimum wage?
Because, like, okay, if we were to factor kids into the analysis we just did, that would probably triple the amount of money.
So what if it's one person, 2 kids? They wouldn't be able to live, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm an advocate of having breathing room, you know. And if that is a situation, there should be a lot of government
And I
subsidy.
imagine that's a lot of situations.
But I don't know if I'd make an overall rule to accommodate for that. Because I'd imagine most people who are single don't have kids.
Yeah, but it's just to be like a part of the conversation, right?
For sure, you know, and I'd rather it be higher than necessary than lower than necessary. But I think the best way to do it would be to index, maybe take what does it cost for one person to live, multiply that by like 1.5x, and then index that for every single county in America.
Yeah.
So in Wyoming, maybe it's $11 an hour. In San Francisco, maybe it's $23 an hour. You know, but make sure that everybody has enough. And like honestly, if a politician went out there and did this, it would really resonate with people and just be like, "Yo, here's how much average rent is. Here's how much food costs in our area," and then just
Dude,
do
you
it.
know what I think would be kind of crazy though, or what I wouldn't even. Be
And we
that
almost fucking passed. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Build Back Better. We almost got $10 an hour, but we fucking couldn't
really.
because Republicans wanted to compromise on it.
What do they want?
Romney came to the table with $10 an hour because Biden tried to get 15, and there was like 1 or 2 holdouts in the Senate.
Really?
Manchin was one of them.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I saying? One sec. We're 48 minutes in. I can think for a second. Minimum wage. Oh yeah. I wonder if okay, this is something that wouldn't even surprise me. Is I wonder if Democrats proposed $15 minimum wage federally, $10 we'll say. I wonder, not Republican politicians, but I wonder how many Republicans would be against that are literally minimum wage workers just because of do you think there would be people that would like that?
So it's such a fucking beautiful and complicated question. I think that you can win. So okay, do you know what the what percent of Americans support raising the minimum wage?
75.
80.
Okay.
80 consistently in every poll. A majority of Republicans support it. Very few people actually make the federal minimum wage. Like somewhere around like 20 million people. But
Only 20 million people are on,
make 725.
Okay.
But if you were to raise it to 15, that would incorporate a ton of people because that's everyone who makes 10, 11, 12, 13. I think a lot of Republicans would be for it. I think what it proves is Republicans care more about wokeness than they do about making more money, which is kind of fucking crazy.
Yeah, dude, because imagine if Republicans went to the table with, we're going to do this. Imagine how many Democrats you'd pull over that, like, care about being, like, socially liberal. But they're like, I also can't really live that well on my own means. But if a Republican's going to give me $15 an hour, I might just socially be liberal and not vote that way.
I'll be honest with you. If Trump came to the table and he flipped on, like, 2 or 3 things, if he was like, I'm going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and I am now pro-choice. I'm not going to touch it. And I am okay with marijuana legalization. I'd have to consider him as a viable candidate.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, I mean...
And I don't want to do that.
No, and that's kind of crazy because that also, like, puts into perspective my position even on him. It's like, I would probably almost throw out all of, like, the indictment shit, all of the felony shit.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying at the end of the day, that shit really doesn't matter that much.
It doesn't. Yeah.
It can be a vehicle to argue against people who it does matter to.
Yeah.
But if Biden was convicted on a bunch of shit, I'd still vote for him. Because all I care about is how are you going to affect American people with your policies?
And that's the thing. That's why, like, yeah, that is the strongest argument against Trump is he wasn't very effective policy-wise. Biden is very effective policy-wise. That's, like, the only argument that really even does matter, you know? Like, obviously, you probably don't really want a criminal running, but if a criminal's running that's enacting great change, then you don't really care that much about the crime.
Let me ask you a question. I think about tax cuts a lot, right? Because, like, I've never really been a big tax cut guy. It's just not something that Democrats push for. But I think, like, Republicans will go out there and they'll argue, we want to put more money in working people's hands. We want to cut their taxes. And say what you will about the Trump tax bill, it did cut taxes for a lot of working class people. Now, a lot of those clauses were sunsetted, so in 10 years they're going to expire. Whereas the tax cuts he put in for rich people are permanent.
Yeah.
That's in the legislation. Do you really have an issue if, like, say an average working person makes $5,000 more because the minimum wage goes up, or $5,000 more because their taxes are cut. Do you have an opinion on that?
No, I think $5,000 is $5,000 no matter what.
Yeah.
No, I don't care if it comes from taxes or if it comes from not being pulled out of your paycheck or if it comes from a higher minimum wage.
Same.
No,
And
I don't really care.
there's some things like healthcare where like the government can run that more efficiently. So we can raise your taxes by $2,000.
Yeah.
But we're going to cut how much you're actually spending because it's more efficient to have one program
Yeah,
doing that.
in respect to the tax cut conversation, I think it's important to talk about the fact that like people who are really anti-taxes, it's like, what roads are you driving onto your job, to your work? You know, what schools are you sending your children to? What hospital do you go to that you can get healthcare from? What restaurants do you go to that you can get food from? Well, I mean, what grocery stores?
We got to bring on
A lot of that is taxed. That a lot of that comes from taxes.
There would be
That's
no
how
society
it works.
without
if
taxation.
right now you stopped getting taxed, maybe society would probably move on for I don't even know, maybe 4 years, maybe longer.
No chance.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking like immediately now, no one gets taxed anymore. There were to be current things that would still function, but you
What
wouldn't
would
get
function? There'd be no government.
Well, I know. I mean, like if like government also like in this hypothetical, like roads would still work for a little bit longer. Like schools would still work a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Everything that taxes have built, those things would still
But
run
you
a bit
couldn't
longer.
pay teachers' salaries and shit.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe actually I take it back. Maybe taxes are even more important than I'm talking about.
Even something as simple as like sending mail, right?
Yeah.
If you were to get rid of the United States Postal Service and FedEx and Amazon took over, a bunch of people wouldn't be able to send mail.
Yeah.
Because there's some areas that are so rural that it's not there's no way that FedEx can make money shipping out there.
Yeah.
So they won't do it, you know?
Okay,
what
well,
taxes do.
you're making an even stronger argument for taxes being important.
What taxes do is they tax people who have excess privilege and money to make it easier for people who wouldn't be able to have advantages or to live normally in a fully capitalist system. And I love capitalism. It's great at creating efficiency in many cases. But when it comes to things that we need to do, but corporations would lose money on, like helping sick people or putting out fires, no way to profit off of that. It needs to be done by the state.
Yeah.
Did you see this fucking snake?
No, what happened?
So, dude, like in the Amazon, they found the world's largest snake. Like this fucker is like 26 feet long, 500 pounds. Its head is the size of a human. It's like
And this is a new snake?
new snake. They didn't even know about this species. Like,
Undiscovered.
yeah, and it lives underwater for now. But like, man, if these fuckers get above ground, I'm gonna have to buy some fucking machetes.
Yeah, for real. All right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you later.